Back to reality, my friends. This is what we're used to. And I'm smiling, but it's only because I don't want to cry. Today was straight up ugly. The game, the loss, the weather, the special teams, the whole damn thing.
It was lifeless. It was gutless. It was heartless. It was just less, everything. 49ers literally pulled him off his couch and said, we got nothing. We got nothing. Today, Eric Kendricks had 10 tackles and looked like Fred Warner to me.
The Philadelphia Eagles just experienced something that shouldn't have been possible. Defending Super Bowl champions, playing at home, facing a 49ers team held together by prayers and practice squad players. And they lost. Not just lost, got embarrassed, got outplayed, got outcoached so badly it's almost hard to believe. But here's the thing. People aren't talking about the game anymore. They're not discussing the dropped passes or the predictable offense or the coaching decisions that made zero sense.
The 49ers won this game with their 5th, 6th, and 7th linebackers on the roster. The 49ers won this game and outgained Philadelphia 361 to 307 without Nick Bosa, without Fred Warner, without Brandon Ayuk. Screw you.
But this is a team that offensively did what they did last season, did what they did to a proud Kansas City Chiefs defense there in the Superdome. And so you do have to wonder when they did it with Kellen Moore, who's now the New Orleans Saints head coach, why isn't it working with Kevin Patullo?
And it's hard to explain why. If they didn't have any talent, that's the easy solution. That's the easy answer. They don't have talent.
No, the entire football world has shifted focus to something else entirely. Jalen Hurts walked up to that podium after the worst loss of his career and said something that broke the internet. And now everyone's divided. Half the world thinks he's the ultimate leader, a man who protects his teammates at all costs. The other half thinks he's part of the problem, enabling dysfunction, hiding the real issues behind noble-sounding words. What actually happened in that press conference?
But this Philadelphia loss is right there, in my opinion, because they had no business losing this ball game at all. And we gave them grace the entire season because of the talent. When you talk about the inefficiencies on the offensive side, we all felt like, well, they can get it right.
The Eagles scored 19 points with the NFL's most expensive offense. They mustered 119 yards total in the second half.
But they did not keep their issues in-house. It spilled out for everyone to see. And there was a lot of dirty laundry that was out there. And just imagine of what we heard and what we saw this season. Imagine what we didn't hear and what we didn't see. If that's what came out onto Broad Street.
What is Hurts really doing here? And why are so many people losing their minds over a few sentences spoken after a football game? The answer is way more complicated than anyone expected. And honestly, it might change how you view leadership forever. Let's set the stage properly here, because the context makes everything that happened afterward 10 times more insane. The San Francisco 49ers walked into Philadelphia, missing half their defensive stars. Nick Bosa wasn't playing. Fred Warner wasn't playing. These are all pro talents, generational defenders, the kind of players who change games just by being on the field. And then during the actual game, things got even worse for San Francisco. George Kittle went down with a torn Achilles, their best offensive weapon. Gone, season over, carted off the field. The 49ers were literally falling apart before everyone's eyes. Philadelphia should have destroyed them, should have run them off the field.
I take ownership for not being able to put points on the board. It all starts with me and ends with me.
AJ has pouted, complained, all but mutinied all year long, all but rebelled. It's always over targets and catches and targets and catches, targets, catches.
I think it's tough to single out one individual, especially in a moment like this. We all got to improve, and that's how I look at everything that we go through.
Should have won by 3 touchdowns minimum. Instead, the opposite happened. The 49ers outgained the Eagles 361 to 307. Let that sink in for a moment. A team missing multiple stars with players getting injured during the game somehow moved the ball better than the defending Super Bowl champions. Eric Kendricks became the story nobody expected. This man was released by the Dallas Cowboys before the season. Teams looked at him and saw a 33-year-old linebacker whose best days were clearly behind him. Washed up, done, ready for retirement. The 49ers brought him in out of desperation because they had nobody else. And what happened? 10 tackles. A game-saving pass breakup on the final play of the game. A guy pulled off his couch just ended Philadelphia's season. The 49ers were playing 6th and 7th string linebackers, guys whose names most casual fans had never heard.
Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown have clashed for several years. They had an off-the-field incident and personal clash that for a while I thought they had resolved, but it's one that I don't know if you ever quite get over it. I think they just don't like each other. I don't think they hate each other. I just think they don't like each other.
I think it's tough to single out one individual, you know, especially in a moment like this. We all got to improve, and that's how I look at everything that we go through. For not being able to put points on the board, it all starts with me and ends with me.
Practice squad players who were probably shocked they even got activated. And they won. They actually won. They went into a hostile environment against a team loaded with Pro Bowl talent, and they walked out with a victory. Final score was 23-19, which doesn't even tell the whole story. The Eagles had every single advantage imaginable. Home crowd, rest, a healthier roster, a championship pedigree, and they coughed it up. Just handed the game away like it meant nothing.
And as part of them self-cannibalizing, you had Nick Sirianni arguing with A.J. Brown on the sideline. A.J. Brown had a big drop. Saquon Barkley had a big drop. Devontae Smith had a big drop. Massive, massive moments in that game.
We heard a lot of guys after they played the Philadelphia Eagles say, it's right there in front of you.
This wasn't supposed to happen. The Eagles were favorites for a reason. They had Saquon Barkley fresh off one of the most dominant rushing seasons in recent memory. They had A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, two receivers who would be the top option on almost any other team. They had Dallas Goedert at tight end. They had an offensive line that costs more than some teams' entire rosters. On paper, this should have been a coronation. The defending champions returning home to handle a beaten-up opponent before moving on to bigger challenges. Instead, it became a funeral, a shocking end to a season that promised so much more. The crowd at Lincoln Financial Field sat in stunned silence as the final seconds ticked away. This fan base has seen disappointment before. They know heartbreak intimately. But this felt different. This felt like something broke beyond just losing a single game. San Francisco's players celebrated like they had just pulled off the impossible, because they had. Kyle Shanahan's coaching had somehow turned a roster held together with tape and hope into a functional unit capable of beating a far superior opponent. The man deserves every bit of credit he's received since this game ended. Meanwhile, the Eagles walked off looking confused, lost, like they couldn't quite process what just happened to them. How does a team with this much talent lose this game? How does a championship roster fail this spectacularly when everything was set up perfectly? These are the questions that hung over Philadelphia as the stadium emptied. These are the questions that still don't have good answers. And these are the questions that Jalen Hurts would be asked to address just minutes later. But what happened next is what really caught everyone's attention. Because when Hurts stepped up to that microphone, he didn't do what people expected. He didn't point fingers. He didn't call out the obvious failures around him. He didn't address the elephants in the room that everyone watching could clearly see. He did something else entirely. Something that would spark a national debate about leadership and accountability and what it really means to be a franchise quarterback in the modern NFL. The stage was set. The loss was devastating. And the press conference that followed would become more talked about than the game itself. That alone tells you something significant about what went down. 19 points. The Philadelphia Eagles scored 19 points at home in a playoff game with one of the most expensive offenses in the entire league, against a defense missing multiple all-pro caliber players. 19 points. That number should haunt this organization for years. Let's break down just how pathetic this performance really was. In the second half, when the game was on the line and adjustments needed to happen, the Eagles managed 119 total yards. That's not a typo. 119 yards in an entire half of playoff football, with Saquon Barkley in the backfield, with two elite receivers running routes, with a tight end who commands double coverage. This wasn't a talent problem. Talent was everywhere on that roster. This was something else entirely, something deeper. something that had been festering all season long and finally exploded at the worst possible moment. Opposing defensive coordinators had been saying it for months. The Eagles' offense was predictable, basic, easy to defend if you just watched the film and trusted your eyes. Multiple teams after playing Philadelphia would talk openly about how simple the scheme looked, how straightforward everything was, how they knew what was coming before the ball was even snapped. That's a coaching problem. That's a design problem. That's not Jalen Hurts missing throws or making bad decisions. That's the system failing the players asked to execute it, and everyone watching could see it clear as day. Kevin Patchello took over as offensive coordinator this season, replacing Kellen Moore, who helped lead this same roster to a Super Bowl victory the year before. Same weapons, same talent, same quarterback, different coordinator, drastically different results. The offense that looked unstoppable in the Super Bowl suddenly looked lost against teams with far less talent than Kansas City. The running game that should have dominated couldn't find consistent lanes. The passing game that should have picked apart a depleted secondary couldn't generate big plays when they mattered most. Everything felt disconnected. Timing was off. Routes weren't creating separation. The creativity that marked their championship run had completely vanished. And then there were the drops. My goodness, the drops. A.J. Brown getting the ball on a crucial third down. Ball hits his hands, falls to the ground, drive over. Later in the game, Devonta Smith in a critical fourth quarter moment, ball in both hands, dropped, momentum killed. These are Pro Bowl receivers making rookie mistakes at the most important moments, but here's what makes this truly frustrating. These drops weren't happening in a vacuum. They were symptoms of a larger disease. When an offense isn't functioning properly, when timing is off, when players don't trust the scheme, you see exactly what happened to Philadelphia. Mental mistakes compound physical mistakes. Pressure creates errors that wouldn't happen in normal circumstances. The Eagles' offense looked tight, nervous, like they were thinking too much instead of just playing. And that falls on the coaching staff. Creating an environment where players feel confident and prepared is literally their job. They failed at that job spectacularly. Watch the tape and you'll see receivers running routes that don't mesh together. You'll see Hurts holding the ball because nothing is opening up. You'll see a quarterback who doesn't trust what he's seeing because what he's seeing doesn't make sense. The scheme was fighting against the talent instead of maximizing it. Compare this to what Kyle Shanahan was doing on the other sideline, with inferior players, with backups at crucial positions. With a tight end who went down during the game, Shanahan adapted, called plays that put his guys in positions to succeed, used creativity and misdirection to manufacture advantages that didn't exist on paper. That trick play touchdown. Joan Jennings throwing to Christian McCaffrey. That's coaching. That's recognizing a moment and having the preparation to execute something unexpected. The Eagles had nothing like that. Nothing that surprised anyone. Nothing that forced the 49ers defense to adjust their approach. 19 points. The number keeps coming back because it represents everything wrong with this offense. Not a lack of talent, an abundance of talent being wasted, being mismanaged, being asked to do things that clearly weren't working. And when Jalen Hurts was asked about this afterward, he refused to point the finger at anyone. Not the coordinator, not the receivers, not the scheme, just blanket blame for himself. Taking ownership of things that weren't really his to own. Is that noble? Is that what leaders do? Or is that allowing real problems to hide behind fake accountability? Those questions matter because until Philadelphia addresses what actually went wrong, they're destined to repeat these failures. The offense wasn't just bad in this game. It had been struggling all season. Warning signs everywhere. And now the bill came due at the worst possible time. Someone needs to answer for that. Someone besides the quarterback who did everything he could with what he was given. Jalen Hurts walked to that podium knowing exactly what questions were coming. Everyone in that room had just watched the same disaster unfold. The drops, the predictable plays, the complete inability to move the ball when it mattered. He knew what reporters wanted to hear. Someone taking responsibility. Someone explaining what the HLL just happened. And then he said it. The words that would trend nationwide within hours. The statement that divided fans and analysts and former players into two camps that still haven't reconciled. It all starts with me and ends with me. On the surface, that's beautiful, right? That's leadership. That's a franchise quarterback taking the heat when everyone around him failed. That's exactly what coaches dream about when they're building culture. A leader who shields his teammates from criticism, who steps into the fire willingly. Except something felt off. Something about the way Hurts handled those questions made people uncomfortable in ways they couldn't immediately articulate. It took hours for the discourse to really explode, for people to start questioning what they actually witnessed. When reporters pressed him specifically about Kevin Patchello, about whether that relationship had a future, about whether the offensive coordinator who just orchestrated one of the most pathetic performances in recent memory would be returning, Hurts deflected completely. I think it's tough to single out one individual, especially in a moment like this. Wait, hold up. You just said everything starts and ends with you. You just took full responsibility for the entire loss. But when asked about a specific person whose job literally determines whether the offense functions, you suddenly can't single out anyone. That's where people started seeing the contradiction. That's where the narrative began shifting from this is leadership to this is something else entirely. Because taking blame isn't the same as providing answers. Accepting responsibility isn't the same as addressing problems. You can fall on the sword all you want, but if the real issues never get discussed, they never get fixed. Multiple analysts pointed out the obvious. Hurts was protecting everyone: the coordinator, the receivers who dropped passes, the head coach who was arguing with his star player on the sideline. Everyone got covered by that blanket statement. And blanket coverage means nobody is actually held accountable. When you say it's all my fault, what you're really saying is let's not talk about whose fault it actually was. When you say, I take full ownership, you're closing the door on conversations that desperately need to happen. When you refuse to single out individuals, you're allowing individuals who deserve scrutiny to escape it. Former players weighed in immediately. Some praised Hurts for being a true leader. Others questioned whether this approach actually helps anything. The debate raged across every sports platform within hours. Here's what made it even more complicated. Hurts threw for 168 yards, completed 20 of 35 passes. The interceptions he did throw were more great plays by the defense than terrible decisions by him. He wasn't the problem on that field. Everyone watching knew that. He knew that. The reporters knew that. So why was he taking all the blame? Some saw a man trying to hold a fractured locker room together, trying to prevent the complete implosion that seemed inevitable if fingers started pointing in every direction, trying to be the adult in a situation where chaos was lurking just beneath the surface. Others saw something different. They saw a quarterback who won't have the hard conversations, who won't demand better from the people around him, who won't address the real dysfunction because addressing it would require confrontation he's not comfortable with. Both interpretations have merit. That's what makes this so fascinating. Hurts could genuinely believe he's doing the right thing, protecting his guys, keeping things in-house, being the bigger man, and he could simultaneously be enabling problems that will continue destroying this team from the inside. Leadership isn't just about taking blame. Real leadership involves honest assessment, requires uncomfortable truths, demands that people who aren't performing face consequences for not performing. You can protect your teammates and still acknowledge that things need to change. Hurts did one without the other. He absorbed all the criticism without directing any of it where it needed to go. He became a shield for dysfunction instead of a force for correction. And the internet couldn't figure out how to feel about that. Still can't, honestly, because we want our leaders to be noble and selfless. We want them to protect their people, but we also want them to fix problems, to make things better, to not allow failure to repeat itself. Hurts gave us the nobility without the fixing, the protection without the accountability for others, the words without the substance behind them. That's why this went viral. That's why people are still debating it days later, because it touched something deeper than football. It raised questions about what we actually want from the people we put in charge, and whether looking like a leader is the same as being one. Let's talk about the elephant Jalen Hurts absolutely refused to acknowledge. Kevin Patchello, the offensive coordinator who just watched his unit score 19 points at home in a playoff game with arguably the most talented skill position group in football. This man took over for Kellen Moore before the season, and that context matters enormously, because Kellen Moore helped lead this exact same roster to a Super Bowl championship. Same quarterback, same receivers, same running backs, same offensive line, different coordinator, completely different results. Under Moore, the Eagles' offense was dynamic, unpredictable, capable of attacking defenses from every angle and adjusting when things weren't working. They scored 35 points against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. 35 points against what many consider the best defense in football. The system worked because the coordinator understood how to maximize his personnel. Under Patchelo, that same offense looked lost. Confused, unable to figure out what it wanted to be, the running game would dominate one week and disappear the next. The passing attack would show flashes then vanish for entire quarters. Nothing felt connected. Nothing felt intentional. Opposing teams noticed immediately. After playing Philadelphia, multiple defensive coordinators commented publicly about how simple the Eagles' offense looked, how easy it was to prepare for, how you could sit in certain coverages and trust that the offense would eventually run into them. That's damning criticism from people whose literal job involves studying this stuff. The scheme was basic. The play calling was predictable. The adjustments when things weren't working seemed non-existent. All season-long warning signs flashed, and all season-long people assumed the talent would eventually overcome the coaching deficiencies. It didn't, not when it mattered most. So when reporters asked Hurts directly about Patchelo, about whether that relationship had a future, about whether changes needed to happen, they expected something, anything, an acknowledgement that maybe the system wasn't working, a hint that conversations would be happening, even just frustration at the situation. Instead, Hurts shut it down completely, wouldn't go there, protected the coordinator the same way he protected everyone else. Even though everyone watching knew the offense had failed spectacularly, here's what makes this particularly frustrating. Patchelo's system never seemed to fit this roster. The concepts he was running looked designed for different players, different strengths, different skill sets. It was like watching someone try to force puzzle pieces together that clearly didn't match. Saquon Barkley should have dominated this game, running against a depleted front seven with backup linebackers trying to fill gaps. Instead, he was bottled up, neutralized, used in ways that didn't maximize what makes him special. A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith should have terrorized a secondary missing key pieces. Instead, they ran routes that didn't create natural separation. Faced coverages they couldn't beat because the designs weren't clever enough to generate advantages. Great coordinators put players in positions to succeed. They find ways to create mismatches. They adapt when defenses take away the first option. Patchelo did none of that. He ran his stuff regardless of what the defense showed, and his stuff didn't work. Meanwhile, on the other sideline, Kyle Shanahan was calling a masterpiece, with worse players, with backups everywhere, with a tight end going down during the game. Shanahan adjusted on the fly, found weaknesses and exploited them, put together a game plan that maximized every ounce of talent on his roster. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. One coordinator made chicken salad out of nothing. The other coordinator had a full kitchen and still managed to burn water. But Hurts won't say that, can't say that, or won't say that. We don't know which. We just know he protected Patchelo when protection was the last thing deserved. The question now becomes what happens in the offseason. Does Philadelphia actually make the change everyone knows needs to happen? Does ownership look at this situation honestly and decide that talent alone isn't enough if the coaching can't maximize it? Or does everyone just agree to learn and grow and run it back with the same broken pieces? Hurts' press conference made that second option more possible. By refusing to address the coordinator problem publicly, he gave the organization cover to do nothing, to pretend everything is fine, to convince themselves that minor tweaks will fix major issues. Leadership sometimes means saying uncomfortable things, sometimes means pointing out what everyone can see but nobody wants to acknowledge, sometimes means risking relationships to ensure problems get solved. Hurts didn't do that. He took the easy path, the path that makes him look noble while allowing dysfunction to persist, the path that protects friendships at the expense of championships. And Philadelphia fans are left wondering, will anything actually change? Or will they watch the same predictable offense fail again next season while their quarterback insists everything starts and ends with him? The Patchelo question needed an answer. Hurts refused to give one. That refusal tells its own story. Now we need to address something that's been simmering all season and finally boiled over in this game. A.J. Brown, the franchise receiver, the guy they're paying elite money to be the #1 option. The man who was literally arguing with his head coach on the sideline during a playoff game. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't frustration in the heat of battle that gets forgotten by Tuesday. This was the culmination of tension that's been building for months, maybe longer. And it represents a fracture in this organization that Jalen Hurts absolutely will not discuss. Let's start with what happened during the game. Third down, crucial moment. Ball hits A.J. Brown directly in the hands. Dropped. Drive killed, momentum shifted. The kind of play that Pro Bowl receivers make in their sleep, except Brown couldn't hold on. Later in the broadcast, cameras caught Brown in a heated exchange with Nick Sirianni. The head coach, arms waving, words flying, body language screaming frustration. This was happening on the sideline, during a playoff game, with cameras everywhere capturing every second. That image alone tells you everything about where this team is mentally. You don't have those confrontations if things are good behind the scenes. You don't blow up at your coach publicly if there's trust and communication privately. Something is broken between these men, and everyone watching could see it. But the Brown situation goes deeper than one argument. Insiders have been whispering all season about tension between Brown and Hurts, specifically. Reports suggest they had an off-field incident, a personal clash that created distance between them. The kind of thing that's hard to come back from even when you're both professionals. Multiple analysts have said it plainly. They don't like each other, not hate, but definitely not friendship, not the chemistry you need between a quarterback and his top receiver, just tolerance, coexistence, two guys doing a job together without actually enjoying it, and that tension has manifested on the field constantly. Brown has pouted about targets all year, complained when he wasn't getting enough looks, showed frustration through body language that everyone could read, the kind of behavior that poisons locker rooms if left unchecked. When your number one receiver is more concerned with his personal statistics than the team winning, that's a problem. When your franchise quarterback has to manage egos instead of just playing football, that's a problem. When the chemistry that should exist naturally between these positions has to be manufactured through effort, that's a massive problem. And yet Hurts won't discuss any of it, won't acknowledge the obvious friction, won't address whether this relationship can be repaired or whether changes need to happen. Just blanket statements about everyone needing to improve, everyone being accountable together, everyone learning from this experience. That's not leadership. That's avoidance. That's pretending a house isn't on fire while smoke pours from every window. The Brown drop wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a deeper issue. When receivers don't trust the system, when they're frustrated with their role, when tension exists between them and the quarterback, concentration suffers. Mental errors increase. Balls that should be caught get dropped. Watch Brown's body language throughout the season, and you'll see someone who wasn't fully bought in. Someone going through motions rather than playing with joy. Someone whose mind was elsewhere even when his body was on the field. Devonta Smith had his own crucial drop in this game. Fourth quarter. Ball in both hands, failed to secure it. Another elite receiver making an uncharacteristic mistake at the worst possible time. Is that coincidence? Or is that evidence of an offense where nobody feels comfortable, where the dysfunction at the top has infected everyone? These are questions that need honest answers. Answers Hurts refuses to provide, because providing them would require acknowledging that his relationship with Brown is fractured, that the locker room has issues, that not everyone is pulling in the same direction. The offseason will force these conversations eventually. Trade rumors are already swirling around Brown, whether Philadelphia can get value for him, whether they even should try, whether starting fresh with a different receiver might actually improve things more than the talent downgrade would hurt. Those are real discussions happening in front offices right now. And Hurts acting like everything is fine makes those discussions harder. Makes it easier to pretend problems don't exist. Makes it more likely that nothing changes and this same dysfunction destroys next season too. Brown argued with his coach during a playoff game, dropped a crucial pass, has been visibly frustrated all season. And the quarterback's response is, "We all need to improve." That's not accountability. That's not leadership. That's covering for someone who might not deserve coverage. That's protecting a relationship that might not be worth protecting. Sometimes the right move is admitting something isn't working. Sometimes leadership means having the courage to say this needs to change. Hurts didn't do that, won't do that. And Philadelphia's championship window keeps getting smaller while he refuses to address what everyone can plainly see. While the Eagles were imploding, Kyle Shanahan was conducting a clinic on the other sideline. And the contrast between what he did and what Philadelphia's coaching staff did might be the most damning evidence of all. This wasn't just a win for San Francisco. This was arguably Shanahan's greatest coaching performance ever. Multiple analysts said it immediately after the game. Regardless of Super Bowls, regardless of NFC championships, This single game might represent the pinnacle of his coaching career. Think about what he was working with. Nick Bosa wasn't playing. The best pass rusher in football. The guy who changes game plans just by existing. Gone. Fred Warner wasn't playing. The defensive quarterback. The man who organizes everything and makes calls that keep the unit functioning. Gone. Then during the actual game, George Kittle went down, torn Achilles, season-ending injury. Their best offensive weapon and one of the premier tight ends in league history, carted off the field. Done. Most coaches would have folded, would have accepted that the deck was too stacked against them, would have played conservatively and hoped for lucky breaks. Shanahan did the opposite. He attacked. Created. He found ways to manufacture advantages that didn't exist on paper. That trick play touchdown was the perfect example. Joan Jennings throwing to Christian McCaffrey, a receiver throwing to a running back. The kind of play you draw up knowing it only works if the timing is perfect, if the execution is flawless, if your players trust you enough to make it happen when everything is on the line. Shanahan called it at the perfect moment, when the Eagles' defense was expecting something else, when the situation demanded creativity instead of predictability, and his players executed beautifully because they trusted the call, because they believed in the system. Compare that to what was happening on the Philadelphia sideline. The same plays getting called repeatedly. The same concepts that weren't working kept getting run. No adjustments. No creativity. No moments where you thought, wow, that was clever. Great coaches make their players better. Great coaches find ways to maximize whatever talent they have available. Great coaches adapt to circumstances and put people in positions to succeed. Kyle Shanahan did all of that. The Eagles' coaching staff did none of it. Eric Kendricks wasn't supposed to be a factor in this game. A 33-year-old linebacker the Cowboys released because they thought he was finished. Shanahan put him in positions where his experience mattered more than his declining athleticism. Let him read and react instead of asking him to cover ground he couldn't cover anymore. 10 tackles. Game-saving play on the final drive. A guy literally signed off his couch looking like a pro bowler. That's coaching. That's system. That's understanding what you have and using it correctly. Practice squad players were making plays for San Francisco. Guys whose names nobody knew before this game were contributing in meaningful ways because the scheme gave them chances to succeed. Because the preparation put them in familiar situations. Because coaching can elevate talent when done correctly. Meanwhile, Philadelphia's pro bowlers were dropping passes and looking confused. Elite players making mental mistakes. Talented receivers running routes that didn't create separation. A running back getting bottled up despite facing a depleted front seven. Same talent that won a Super Bowl looking completely lost. And the only variable that changed was the coaching. The system. The play calling. The game planning. That comparison is devastating for Kevin Patchello, for Nick Sirianni, for everyone on that Philadelphia staff, because it proves the talent was there, proves the players were capable, proves the failure came from the top down. Shanahan was asked after the game about overcoming all the adversity, all the injuries, all the obstacles. His answer was simple. They found a way to play good football regardless of circumstances. That's what great coaches do. They find ways. They solve problems. They refuse to let circumstances become excuses. The Eagles had every circumstance working in their favor and still couldn't find a way. Still couldn't solve the problems that emerged. Still looked helpless when things got difficult. Coaching matters. Systems matter. Preparation matters. San Francisco proved that by winning with less. Philadelphia proved it by losing with more. And yet when Jalen Hurts stood at that podium, he wouldn't acknowledge any of it. Wouldn't point out that his coaching staff got out-schemed. Wouldn't suggest that maybe the approach needed to change. Just took all the blame himself and let everyone else escape accountability. Shanahan's masterpiece deserves recognition, but it also deserves to be studied by Philadelphia, to show them what good coaching looks like, what creativity and adaptation can accomplish. What happens when you put players in positions to succeed instead of asking them to overcome bad designs? The gap between these coaching staffs was canyon-wide in this game. Everyone watching could see it. Everyone except apparently the quarterback who refuses to single out anyone. Let's step back and look at what's really happening here. Because this debate about Jalen Hurts goes way beyond football. It touches something fundamental about how we think about leadership, about accountability, about what it really means to be in charge. On one side, you have people praising Hurts for protecting his teammates, for keeping things in-house, for not throwing anyone under the bus when he easily could have. These people see a leader who cares about his guys, who values loyalty over public spectacle, who understands that pointing fingers often makes things worse. There's validity to that perspective. Great leaders do protect their people. They create environments where failure is addressed privately rather than publicly. They build trust by handling difficult moments with grace. Hurts absolutely displayed those qualities, but here's the counterargument, and it's equally valid. Sometimes protecting people enables dysfunction. Sometimes refusing to address problems allows them to fester. Sometimes taking all the blame actually prevents real accountability from happening. When Hurts says it all starts and ends with me, he's not just accepting responsibility. He's also deflecting attention from others who deserve scrutiny. He's using his own body as a shield for problems he didn't create. He's making it harder for the organization to have honest conversations about what actually went wrong. The offensive coordinator failed, but Hurts won't say that. The receivers dropped crucial passes, but Hurts won't single them out. The head coach was arguing with his star player on national television, but Hurts treats it like a collective failure where everyone shares equally. That's not accurate. That's not honest. And that's not helpful. Real leadership involves hard conversations, involves telling people truths they don't want to hear, involves demanding better from those around you and holding them accountable when they fall short. You can do this privately. You can do this with compassion, but you have to do it. Hurts gave us the appearance of accountability without any of the substance, made himself look noble while allowing real issues to hide behind his sacrifice, protected relationships that might need to be disrupted for the team to actually improve. And here's what's really insidious about this approach. It puts all future pressure on Hurts specifically. If he's the one taking all the blame, then he's the one expected to fix everything. But how can he fix problems he won't even acknowledge exist? The coordinator's scheme isn't working. Hurts has to somehow make it work anyway because he said it's all on him. The receivers are dropping passes. Hurts has to throw even more perfectly to compensate. The chemistry is broken. Hurts has to manufacture it through sheer will. That's not sustainable. That's not fair. And that's not how functional organizations operate. Compare this to other star athletes who faced similar situations. Some chose public confrontation. Some chose private pressure that became public. Some forced trades when things couldn't be fixed. Different approaches, but all involving honest acknowledgement that problems existed beyond just themselves. Hurts chose the protect everyone route. And while that might feel noble in the moment, it might be the choice that damages the team most in the long run. Organizations change when pressure forces change, when dysfunction is exposed and acknowledged, when the people responsible for failures face consequences for those failures. Hurts just removed all that pressure, gave everyone an escape route, made it easier to run things back without addressing what went wrong. Is that what Philadelphia needs right now? A champion of the status quo who presents himself as the sacrificial lamb? Or do they need someone willing to rock the boat, to demand better, to point out that the emperor has no clothes? Leadership means different things in different situations. Sometimes you protect your people. Sometimes you challenge them. Wisdom involves knowing which approach fits which moment. This moment demanded honesty. Demanded acknowledgement that specific things needed to change. Demanded at least a hint that business as usual wouldn't continue. Hurts gave none of that. He retreated into generalities and self-blame that let everyone off the hook. And the people who see that as leadership are confusing noble appearances with effective action. Looking like a leader isn't the same as being one. Taking blame isn't the same as solving problems. Protecting people isn't the same as making them better. Hurts did the first part of each equation without the second. He looked noble. He took blame. He protected everyone, but he didn't address the real issues. Didn't push for actual accountability. Didn't create pressure for meaningful change. That's enabling disguised as leadership. That's allowing dysfunction to continue under cover of sacrifice. That's prioritizing how things look over how things actually work. And Philadelphia will pay the price for it if nothing changes. Because the problems don't care that Hurts took responsibility. They'll still exist next season. They'll still destroy games. They'll still prevent this talented roster from achieving what it should. Unless someone forces honest conversations to happen. Unless someone demands accountability from the people who actually deserve it. Unless someone values fixing problems over protecting relationships. Hurts chose not to be that person. And the debate about whether that makes him a hero or an enabler will rage until we see what happens next. The offseason is about to get ugly in Philadelphia. That's not speculation. That's certainty. Too much went wrong for business as usual to continue. Too many questions need answers. Too much dysfunction got exposed for anyone to pretend everything is fine. Let's start with the obvious. Kevin Patchelow's job security should be measured in hours, not weeks. An offensive coordinator who takes a Super Bowl caliber roster and makes it look pedestrian doesn't deserve another chance to waste this championship window. The scheme didn't work. The play calling was predictable. The adjustments were non-existent. But here's the problem. Hurts just gave him cover by refusing to single anyone out, by saying it's all about collective improvement, by protecting everyone equally. Hurts made it easier for the organization to keep Patchellow around if they want to. And if Patchellow stays, that tells you everything about what's actually happening behind closed doors. That tells you the organization is more interested in stability than winning. That tells you this roster's potential will continue being wasted. The A.J. Brown situation needs addressing too. You can't have your franchise receiver arguing with the head coach during playoff games. You can't have chemistry issues between your quarterback and top target. You can't let that dysfunction linger and expect different results next year. Trade rumors are already circulating. Whether Philadelphia could get value for Brown, whether moving on might actually help more than hurt, whether the personality fit is so broken that elite talent isn't worth the headaches. These are real conversations happening right now. And Hurts acting like everything is a collective issue makes those conversations more difficult. Makes it easier to convince yourself that things will magically improve without difficult decisions. Nick Sirianni's job security is another question mark. The man just got out-coached badly by a team playing practice squad players. His sideline demeanor has been questionable all season. The relationship with his players seems strained in ways that shouldn't exist. Championship coaches don't usually get fired after one bad season. But this wasn't just a bad season. This was a team with everything going for it that completely collapsed when it mattered. That falls on the head coach as much as anyone. Then there's Hurts himself. His own performance regressed from MVP caliber to merely good. Some of that was scheme. Some was receiver issues. Some was him. He's signed to a massive contract. He's supposed to be the franchise cornerstone. But questions exist about whether he can elevate the team or just manages it. This offseason will test Philadelphia's organization in ways they haven't been tested since before the Super Bowl run. Will they make hard decisions? Will they hold people accountable? Will they acknowledge what everyone watching already knows? Or will they hide behind Hurts taking all the blame? Use his noble words as an excuse to change nothing? Convince themselves that running it back with minor tweaks will produce different results? Championship windows close fast in the NFL. The Eagles have maybe 2 or 3 more years with this core before age and salary cap realities force changes. Wasting one of those years on dysfunction they could have fixed is criminal. The talent is there. Saquon Barkley isn't getting younger, but he's still elite. A.J. Brown, when focused, is a top 5 receiver. Devonta Smith keeps improving. The offensive line is among the best in football. The defensive core can compete with anyone. All the pieces exist for another Super Bowl run. They just need to be assembled correctly. Need coaching that maximizes them. Need a culture that demands excellence. Need accountability that ensures failures get addressed. Hurts could be the catalyst for that, or he could continue protecting everyone and watching the same problems destroy another season. His press conference suggests he's chosen the second path. His refusal to single out anyone suggests he values harmony over honesty. Maybe he'll change behind closed doors. Maybe the private conversations are more direct than the public ones. Maybe he's saving the hard truths for the people who need to hear them without cameras around. But the evidence suggests otherwise. The evidence suggests Hurts genuinely believes taking all the blame is the right approach. And if that's true, then Philadelphia needs someone else to force the necessary changes. Front office, ownership, whoever has the power to make decisions regardless of what the quarterback says publicly. Because what Hurts said might sound like leadership, might look like accountability, might feel like the right thing in the moment, but it's not going to fix anything. It's not going to make the offense better. It's not going to repair broken relationships. It's not going to change a single thing about how this team operates. Only action will do that. Only decisions. Only consequences for the people who deserve them. Philadelphia has a choice. Listen to their quarterback's noble words and change nothing. Or ignore the deflection and make the hard calls that winning requires. The The next few months will reveal which path they choose, and that choice will determine whether this team's championship window stays open or slams shut while everyone pretends everything is fine. So where does this leave us? Jalen Hurts said all the right things, took all the blame, protected everyone around him, looked like the leader everyone wants their quarterback to be. And yet something feels wrong about it. Something doesn't sit right. Because words without action are just noise. Accountability without consequences changes nothing. Leadership that enables dysfunction isn't really leadership at all. Hurts gave Philadelphia a shield to hide behind, a noble-sounding excuse to avoid the hard decisions, a way to pretend that collective improvement will fix problems that require specific changes. Maybe he knows exactly what he's doing. Maybe this is strategy. Maybe the real accountability happens behind closed doors where cameras don't exist. Or maybe this is who he is, a good man, a talented player, but not the confrontational force that great teams need when things go sideways, not the voice demanding more from people who deserve criticism. The truth probably lives somewhere in between. Good intentions mixed with flawed execution. Noble goals undermined by an unwillingness to rock the boat. Philadelphia's offseason will answer the questions Hurts wouldn't. Changes or status quo? Accountability or excuses? Championship pursuit or dysfunction acceptance? And we'll be watching every move they make, because this story is far from over.